There's a thing where, especially I'm Sri Lankan culture, and in my culture, there's such a need to belong to the tribe and not shame the family or shame yourself. So be the good girl, get married. If you're not married, that's shame on the family. It's a real Southeast Indian belief. It's like if you're not married with a family, it doesn't matter how successful you are, that's deep shame, right? It's like you're a failure. Hello and welcome to Brave Conversations. I'm your host, Sheila V. This podcast is all about helping you get brave, courageous, and confident to make real and lasting changes in your life so that, yes, you are living your truth. I'm here to help you navigate your spiritual awakening, to guide you how to heal from trauma in your past, and to manifest the life that you know you deserve. You are powerful, you are divine, and I'm here to remind you that you can achieve anything that you want in your life. I am a transformation coach, a spiritual teacher, a business mentor, a speaker, an author, and a badass brave woman. And I am obsessed with women bravely and courageously showing up to live their life with no apologies. And I cannot wait to get into today's episode with you. So this next podcast is on how do you love yourself? What is self-love? And how do we move from self-loathing and self-hate to self-acceptance and self-love? Now, why do I feel so qualified to talk about this? Well, I spent decades and decades and decades of deep self-hate, deep self-loathing. I had suicidal ideation. My self-hate was so bad for periods of time. And I overcompensated so much just to hang on to the scraps of love and validation I could receive from my corporate jobs or the relationships, even if they were very toxic, fragments of love around me. Okay. I came from a low base and it happened for many reasons, and trauma in my childhood. There's particular parts of my own astrology where I came down and incarnated to have an experience where, hey, I had to learn self-love the hard way. Regardless, I'm going to talk about self-love, and I really hope you listening in, it just inspires you to reframe self-love and think of it in a different way. There's a lot of healing I had to do to get myself to a place of love. However, I've truly only transformed my ability to love myself as much through action. So cognitively, a lot of talk therapy helped me just understand what happened in parts of my childhood and teenage years and my 20s, and decisions I was making or not making, or poor decisions I was making and why. However, it was only through action that my life changed, that my self-love increased. So the first point I really want to land with self-love is that voice in your head that's saying you're crap, you're pathetic, you're a loser, no one's going to love you. That is not your voice. It's not the voice of the universe, the divine. It's definitely not your higher self voice, because your higher self voice would never be so cruel or critical. Those negative inner critical voices come from your childhood experience. It's another person's voice. It could be your parents' voice, a school teacher's voice, a sport coach voice, an older sibling's voice, younger siblings. It could come from a friend. It is an external voice. And what happens over time when we've had enough experiences of those voices, especially under the age of 8, where we believe everything told to us is true, because we're so susceptible to influence. It's also very much pre-verbal under the age of 2 or 3. We take that voice on as our own voice. And the problem is, when we're adults, we don't know and don't realize that's an external voice. So the first step of any kind of personal development or healing voice is healing work is identifying whose voice is that. That inner bitch, that inner person that's been cruel to me, that inner critic, who is that? And when you work with a therapist, you start to identify that could be the voice of my mother, my father, my uncle, my grandparents, my older sibling, my piano teacher, my maths teacher, my sporting coach, whatever it is. You start to go, that's not my voice, right? That little bit of separation from the voice is so important, because it starts to mean we question, can we listen to it? Can we believe it? How do we start to dialogue with it? Okay. Um, the voice of self-love, and so the experience of self-love fundamentally also comes to comparing ourselves to others. It comes from several places, but we lack self-love because we compare ourselves to a standard or people around us that we believe are better than us. Okay. It's connected to the voice, but it's also related to comparison shame. We were shamed as children because there were girls or boys around us that were smarter than us, skinnier than us, prettier, sportier, whatever it might be. Choose your flavor of what that might be. And then when we have enough experience of that again, we internalize that voice. And as adults, we walk into rooms and we compare what everyone's wearing to what we're wearing. We compare people's hair and they go, they've got better hair than me. They're skinnier than me. They're smarter than me. How do I be like them? Okay. And that just chips away and erodes at our self esteem. The other way we lack self-love is we believe, and I had this for many years, I believed everyone else was deserving of a partner and a family, and I just wasn't worthy. People are worthy of making money and owning a house, but I won't. Had so many limiting beliefs that this big life, this wonderful, big, juicy life that everyone else seemed to have, I would only ever take the scraps. I'd have to be okay with not having a partner or not being in a great relationship. Just having a relationship was okay. Not having a family, that's not going to happen for me. I don't feel I'm good enough. Um, so you might be experiencing self-love and such a lack of it where it's like, I don't get what everyone else gets. And from that painful place, I stop desiring things. So when we hold a belief set enough, it starts to become our reality. And for me, I stopped desiring big things. I thought, well, I gave up. Essentially, I gave up on my dreams. And maybe you have too. So I want you to reflect, have you given up on your dreams because you've got this limiting belief it happens to others? She can or he can buy a house. They're gonna get married. They're gonna have kids, but I'm not. For some reason, this thing is just never gonna happen to me. Right? So we're really disconnected from our higher self because we're buying in to that voice, that lower consciousness that's saying you aren't going to get it. You're not worthy. Okay. It can also come from religion and morality. There's a thing where, especially Sri Lankan culture, and in my culture, there's such a need to belong to the tribe and not shame the family or shame yourself. So be the good girl, get married. If you're not married, that's shame on the family. It's a real Southeast Indian belief. It's like if you're not married with a family, it doesn't matter how successful you are, that's deep shame, right? It's like you're a failure. And because I was not buying into the paradigm, um, the collective belief of my culture, which happens from so many places. We'd go to parties with other Sri Lankan families and I'd hear conversations and it was just all around me. It wasn't from one person in particular. It was just this cultural norm that just seemed to exist. And if I was born into another culture, I wouldn't have known this one. Yet, whatever culture you're in or religion, you know, some religions we don't get divorced or we don't have sex before marriage or you must be the good girl, right? And it's a morality thing. And if we feel immoral, that we have broken some cultural code, then that chips away at our self love, our self acceptance, and that inner critical voice going, you're certain age and you're not married, and this culture rejects you. This culture says you're not good enough, right? So this is completely externalized, yet over time, unconsciously, slowly, insidiously, I'll say, it starts to become a part of us and our identity. And over time, we don't realize we've taken on all of these limiting beliefs around us and we've made it a standard that we must live up to. Now, because there's such a gap between the standard and where we're operating, that gap erodes our self-love, right? And then over time, it becomes self-hate, self-loathing. This need is I don't have a value. I don't think I should exist, right? So one of the really lowest forms is I don't think I should exist. It's where the suicidal ideation comes from. It's like, am I worthy to exist? Now to fight my way out of this absolute black dark hole where it was like, I am not married, I'm single, I haven't done all these things that people say you should do, and I have no idea how I love myself when all these things that society say I should do, I've done none of them. Like I was a real low point in my early 40s. I was like, I've done none of these things. So where does my love come from? And that's where I really, because hitting rock bottom can be one of the most helpful things in the world. I really started to hold myself to an account of what my vision is. I started to work with mentors and coaches. I did so much healing work. I read every self-help book you could read, and listen. There weren't podcasts back then. I'm not saying you need to do this, but I'm going to say you need to lean in with practitioners to help you come home to yourself, because fundamentally, the lack of self-love means we've given up our identity to a ton of people. We've given up the construction of our identity to all these people outside of ourselves. And unconsciously, we've said, you tell me how worthy I am. You tell me how to live my life. You give me the rules of my life. Inevitably, we don't follow any of that. And inevitably, because of that constructed identity outside of ourselves, that lack of love for self starts to happen. So the healing path for me was to work with so many practitioners that asked me, what do you want from your life, Sheila? What does it look like? Now, this is a big existential question to ask someone that I was deeply unconscious to how much self-abandonment I had done. Yet being asked that question enough time, I started to answer it. Do I really want to be an accountant? Do I want to speak to people. I want to coach. I want to do something different. I didn't even know that I wanted to be a coach. I want to do something different. I want to do a lot of healing work. I only want to pick a certain person that's going to love me this way. I'm okay to delay getting married. I'm okay if I don't get married. I started just to get honest with myself. And the more honest I got with myself, I started to set standards for myself that started to become very high, and I started to live into those standards. Okay. So the journey of self-love is firstly one, you've got to work with practitioners that are going to help be in your court to start to recreate a new identity that is authentic, right? You've got to work with coaches, mentors, spiritual teachers, whoever it might be. They're going to help you construct a new identity, because everything's false, but it's still a new identity that's closer to what you want, right? They're going to ask you different questions, not preconditioned questions that are just going to lead you into, well, you must become qualified as an accountant. You must get married. You must. It's going to be like, what exactly do you want? Do you want to pack up and travel the world for a year? Then you got to go and do it. Okay. The second big thing with the journey to self-love is self-discipline. So the minute I started to construct new parts of my identity, I had to make promises and actions to make it happen. So that involves going to the gym. That involves eating better. That involves, turning up on time to meet people. That involves deepening relationships. All of that requires discipline. So self-love is the implementation of discipline and follow through on the promises to yourself. If you say you're going to do it, you got to do it. And when you do that enough, a cycle of self-love begins. So if someone invites you out, or someone says, "I'll stay out for a few more drinks," and you say, "No, I've got to go home. I promised myself I'd go to the gym." Going home early and getting up and going to the gym is an act of love. It doesn't matter if you don't like it. It doesn't matter if you're resenting that you had to go home early. It's okay. You do enough, you're going to start to realize all these behaviors are acts of self-love. If you're struggling with discipline, create a structure, create accountability. If you're still struggling, break down the actions even more. Are you committing to running 10 kilometers when you don't run? Run 1 kilometer. Just get up and run 500 meters. Chunk it down so much that you can't but succeed. Chunk it down so damn tiny, you have to succeed. I've started to go to Pilates classes. I'm pregnant right now, and I wanted to go to a new studio this morning. This is how I do any kind of little brave act. And And I got to the studio and I thought, oh, I think the whole class was full and I was a bit nervous that I was going to be thrown out because you had to pre-book. And I was looking at the reformer Pilates machines and I thought there's not enough here. And I started to get really down on myself. I thought, oh, you've really mucked up, Shields. Like you should have booked and you should have done. And I could feel that critical voice, which is so damn strong sometimes inside of me. And then I stopped and I said, you made it. You got up on a Saturday morning. It's 6:30 on a Saturday morning. I got into gym clothes. I'm heavily pregnant. And I came down. I said, and I said to myself, even if I get booted out of this class because they're oversubscribed, I'm going to congratulate myself because I got here, even if I don't do the class. Okay. So the inner critic came up, but I talked to that voice and I said, why am I a success now? So if you're struggling to go to the gym, I don't even want you to walk in the door. I want you just to pack, put on gym clothes, drive to the gym, order a coffee next door and go home. Don't even worry about going in the gym. Just the act of getting to the gym is hard, okay? Chunk it down so damn small that you're like, I'm succeeding. I'm succeeding. It's tiny. It's tiny. I'm starting to write my next book. And I'm feeling a little overwhelmed by the word count that I need to deliver. And again, I went into this, I'm not good enough. How am I going to do it? The catastrophized thinking. And I thought, I'm just going to write 500 words. So every day for 2 weeks, I've written 500 words. And one day I wrote 2,000 words. I'm up to like 10, 12,000 words right now. Okay. And so I chunk down my goals so small that it's inevitable I feel love for myself and self-confidence because I'm achieving little things. Okay. So it depends on where you are. I want the goal to be so damn small. I want you to be so focused and disciplined that you get it. And the next day, within 24-hour cycle, you're just going to expand on that goal. Okay. Now, the next point I want to make about self-love is you don't have to love yourself all the time. I went from deep self-loathing, self-hate, and I wasn't going to be like loving myself 24/7 overnight, but every day during that decade period, and it doesn't have to take you a decade, but every day, every week, I'd say, I just got to love myself a little longer today. So I would be walking home hating on myself, like walking to the bus stop or to the train, saying these negative things about all these things that went wrong during the day. Okay. So I'd have a patch during the day where I'd hate on myself. But I noticed the patches of loving myself during the day were getting longer and longer. And even though I was hating on myself, I was starting to speak kinder and kinder at moments, or I'd stop the thought. So don't be tough on yourself that you got to get to self-love overnight. But I do want you to monitor the progress and even this morning when I was berating myself, I laughed at the voice. I thought, yeah, that's that voice again, but look at me loving myself through this. So you will spend time hating yourself less first and then starting to love yourself more. And at some point, it tips. At some point, you're going to go, wow, I'm actually loving myself more. And I can really feel that cancer-like voice getting smaller and smaller. And yeah, it's still there. But wow, this self-love, I'm watching it. I'm watching it grow and grow. And yes, it does vacillate. It titrates between large and small. It pendulates, call it. But it's definitely growing. That part of your brain, your psyche, the actions you take, it's getting stronger and stronger. Okay. The next step of self-love, you may not like this one. You need to audit and assess relationships around you. You need to assess, are these relationships speaking to you in the most loving, kind way that beautiful, loving, kind voice is speaking to you? Or are these relationships more of the inner critic, the inner cruel voice? You know, the inner voice that is berating you, putting you down, putting your dreams down. Now, I've been through some painful boundary setting experiences with my family. They've been through boundary setting with me when I was acting out. This is a two-way relationship. I also was very difficult with them. I've been through, breakups with friends and separations because I'd look at the relationships and I thought, I've co-created this. I take responsibility for that, but I want it to change. So we don't walk away from relationships. We lean in bravely and have conversations about how can the dynamic change. But self-love is about holding yourself to a high standard, committing through discipline to your own visions and goals, and bringing a tribe in around that supports that vision. Now, during this process, you're going to feel an incongruence and you are going to have to address friends and family, colleagues, bosses, staff members that you're like, you're not talking to me the way I talk to me. The external voice is not matching what the new internal voice, that loving voice is. And you're going to feel that incongruence and you are going to have to address it. The next stage of self-love, and this is a deeper stage, okay, this is definitely not at the beginning of the process. You're going to have to love yourself through failures. You're going to have to love yourself when you are still messing up. Because this is illusion where I'm going to heal and become so healed and perfect. And when I do, I'm going to love myself so much. And that's it. I'm done. Self-love is loving yourself through the absolute mess ups, the failures, the still having arguments with people, the realizing that you still got work to do on how to apologize to people. The self-love is the compassion for the younger parts of you and the adult parts of you that still don't know and still learning in life. Okay. And that's what deep self-love is. That's probably what was missing in your childhood. When you messed up as a 6-year-old, you missed the goal for your sporting team, or you brought home a bad test result, instead of being hit or scolded or yelled at or had love withdrawn, you needed someone, potentially a parent, to hold you in their arms and go, "It's okay, buddy. It's okay, little one. You've got this. I've got you. Let's have a chat about it." You were missing that. Okay. So as an adult, you need to give this to yourself. So self-love that's how it shows up. Self-compassion in your low moments where you're not proud of who you are and how you're showing up. Okay. Fundamentally, self-love is you got to believe in you and your life and your vision more than anyone else. My self-love journey really began when I had my spiritual awakening. I had to believe in my psychic abilities and my mediumship abilities. In a world that thought that was weird and woo-woo, especially when I was a chartered accountant, I was a senior leader, in a big company on my way to becoming a finance director. And I was like, oh my God, I'm seriously going to be laughed at. I'm going to be ridiculed. I don't even know how to make this fit in my world. I had to love myself when my spiritual abilities got activated. I had to love myself when I quit my corporate job and wrote my book. When I had no money, I had no job. I literally just wrote a book for a year and I lived off savings. I lived off my mortgage, right? And during that time, I know my family didn't understand what I was doing. I didn't really explain it very well to them. And I lacked a real level of self-worth. And I had to dig deep and go, no, I believe in what I'm doing. That's the book back there. I'm writing my second book. I've had to learn how to love myself and honor my vision and goals, even when it didn't make sense to me. Quite often, your intuition is going to say, keep going, and you're not going to have a really planned out roadmap. That I truly believe is what mastering the spiritual path is. You got no roadmap. Society is saying what's your plan. Parents, family, bosses, people around you is like, what do you mean you're quitting your job with nothing to go to? What do you mean you're doing that? It feels unsafe, and it feels very unsafe for people around you. Radical self-love is, I don't know how, but I know I need to do it. And choosing you in those moments is what self looks like. So self-love may not always look pretty, comfortable. It may not always look like you're going to get acceptance and validation for people around you. It's got nothing to do with salt baths and massages. Self-care is choosing you in every moment of every day to pursue the life you want relentlessly. And that is not going to be easy. But my God, on the other side of that, the gift of love and acceptance for who you are, there's no value you can ever place on that. There's no value someone could ever place on what I've claimed back over 47 years of living on earth. There's no value. And that's what stands there for you. If you're listening in today, you claim back all your sovereignty that you've given away, your power. Once you get it back, it won't ever go, because once you've lost it and you get it back, in my experience, it feels like a very permanent shift. Okay. Because of the fight that you might have to go through to re-love yourself and the process that you need to go through. Now, if you've got any questions, please DM me. I answer all my DMs. Follow me on Instagram, book in a private psychic mediumship coaching session with me. Check out my programs. I run some group programs through the year, the Brave Woman, the Awakened Woman. I'm here to support you on your spiritual awakening journey, healing through trauma, stepping into that biggest, bravest, boldest vision of you and making it happen. My name's Sheila V. Thank you for tuning in today. Thank you so much for listening. I love you. I'm filled with gratitude for you. I honor you for choosing you, your personal growth, and your evolution. Thank you for letting me into your world. It has been a privilege. Now do me one favor, one big thing. Share this podcast with a soul sister or brother who needs to hear this. My mission on planet Earth is to help as many people as possible so we can be bold, be brave, and be courageously ourselves. I'll see you on the next episode.